Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
The Bears.
Because of the way they play the nickel corner here, and the nickel corner plays 88-85% of the snaps. He's got to be like part linebacker.
The Bears.
When you're in a scouting room, there's going to be differences of opinion.
The Bears.
Once coaches get involved, of course, they've got their own opinions about what fits best for what they want to do, and that could be drastically different than what the scouts say.
Well, you're looking at traits, and he tested very, very well.
The Bears.
One thing good about Kevin, he's been with 2 other organizations, as well as being the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been around.
The Bears.
With Greg Olson, Jerry didn't want to get rid of him. I didn't want to get rid of him. Nobody wanted to get rid of him. One guy wanted to get rid of him, Mike Martz, because Mike Martz didn't know what the hell to do with him. And we tried to talk Lovey out of hiring Mike Martz for a month and a half. He's playing zone, but number one, he doesn't get enough depth with the drop. But who the hell's going? How many times does a 305, 310-pound defensive tackle drop into coverage, especially in a key situation?
The Bears.
Greg, why are teams wrong on quarterback evaluation so often?
Number one, it's a hard position to evaluate. There's probably not as many real good quarterback evaluators as there needs to be.
The Bears. The Bears. The Bears.
Welcome, everyone, to a fresh episode of GTF Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia. This is the first show of the week, the last week of July, and we've got shows extending all the way through the end of the week with the Willis twins on Friday, and I think another Barfly Tailgate show on Sunday. It is a fun week because we've got so many things to talk about. The Hall of Fame game, the Hall of Fame induction that is near and dear, of course, to Greg Gabriel's heart. And we've also got to talk about the Olympics and the fact that Greg's kids are training for the Olympics.
My granddaughter.
Grandkids, I'm sorry. Tell us about your grandkids and your granddaughter.
Amazing little tyke. My daughter sends me these things, and she's not even 5 years old, and she does some of this stuff. And here's what's amazing. Nobody has taught her any of this.
That is
amazing. She does it on her own. She does it just from watching other people.
If I were to do that right now, Greg, that would be the end of me. And then this tumbling act that she does here. One hand.
Is crazy.
One hand. It's a good. Yeah, that's a gold medal. Good.
I know. 4 years old.
Ready.
Look at that. Let me see if I can freeze it right at the top of that. Oh, man. What? I could never. I can do it with 2 hands. And it was very good, sweetie. Great stuff.
It was funny because I said, where'd you learn that? And my daughter said, I don't know. Just watching her sister. Nobody's taught her.
Uh-huh. Well, I got to tell you, you're very proud of her as well. You should be, but you're probably also very proud of the fact that Devin Hester is being inducted into the Hall of Fame on Saturday. Tell us about your feelings right now, given that his career with the Chicago Bears, you were a big part of that, making that happen.
Well, I mean, I'm proud. I mean, we talked about this back in February, end of January, beginning of February, right before the Super Bowl, when it was announced that he got in. We talked about it extensively then. It's just very proud. And one of the main reasons is because he's the first player from the group of people we drafted, starting with the 02 draft, that has gotten into the Hall of Fame. I think there will be more. I think there'll at least be 2 more in Lance Springs and Peanut Tillman. I think Olin will get in, but Olin wasn't with us. Olin was with the previous administration. But even though he spent most of his career with us, but Yeah, I think, we did a great job drafting people, and they are going to get the accolades that they deserve.
And Greg, at what point? I mean, I know you watched tons of tape, and were so convicted that this guy was going to be a player. But at what point, when he actually showed up at Hallis Hall and you started watching him, did you say to yourself, "That was a great pick"?
Well, first of all, it wasn't me. It's a group effort. It always is. No matter who we pick, at whether it's the first round or the seventh round, it's always a group pick. We sign off on it as a group. There's always a consensus opinion there, and the coaches are signing off too. So, but in the case of Devin, and I've told this story 1,000 times, we went into that draft wanting to make sure we drafted Devin Hester. That draft it was just, where do you take him? We could have taken, we had a first round pick and we traded out because we didn't want to use a first round pick on him. And we thought with the earlier second, we could get a defensive back that could come in and play. And that was Danielle Manning, which he did. And then get Devin a little bit later in that second round. And as it turned out, I mean, it worked out that way. But when I got Devin on the phone, I said, "Hey, you want to be a Chicago Bear?" He goes, "For real?" And I said, "Well, yeah, why would it be for real? We're on the clock. We're going to draft it." And he said, well, Tennessee had called me and they said they were going to draft me, and then they didn't do it. And that was like 10, 12 picks before our pick. So what we wanted to do almost, went down the drain. And we were lucky, and I'm glad Tennessee made the mistake there. They ended up taking a running back out of US busted. And that was a fight between the coaching staff and the personnel staff, and the coaching staff won. And that's why you leave the drafting to the personnel staff. I'll just, put my 2 cents in for the scouting staff there.
That is great. And
the old saying, coaches coach, scouts owners own.
Keep it that way. So who else, you said, was it you that drafted him? Who else would you like to name in terms of the scouting, your scouts and so forth, and everyone on the team that was part of the drafting of Mr. Hester?
Well, Jerry, myself, Mark Sadowski was the area scout. And then and Lovey and Dave Tobe. And, Jerry was the first one. And I remember it had to be late November, early December. So, 6 months prior to the draft. And Jerry walks in my office and he goes, "Have you done much on Hester from Miami?" And I said, "Yeah, a little bit, but not much yet." He goes, "I think we got to do more." He goes, "He's got so much special in him as a returner." I said, "Yeah, I know that, but do you want to take a returner only?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know yet, but I just want to make sure we got the right answer." And so we started doing more, and then we'll fast forward to the owners' meetings. The owners' meetings were in Palm Beach, and so they might have been Orlando, but they were in Florida somewhere. Lovey snuck out one day, went down to Miami, worked out Devin, and they had a corner there too, who, if we had stayed at 1, he might have been in consideration for the pick. I don't remember his name. And came back, was high about both, thought Devin could be a backup corner in the league. We knew he wasn't going to be a starter. But that it was really the return stuff. Then it wasn't until later then, after the combine, that we brought in Dave Tobe, which is what we did every year as far as the specialists, the kickers, and the return guys. And we let Dave, on his own accord, rank the kickers, the punters, and the return guys. And he had Devin obviously at the top. And when we go through the positions in the meetings leading up to the draft, we do all the regular positions first. We did the special teams last, and we had a very long conversation about Devin, and Dave wrote off on him. Everybody in the room wrote off on him. So then it was just a matter of where we're going to take him. And, we finally decided, well, we'll trade out. And we let teams know. I started calling some teams probably 4 days before the draft. And the only thing I said, hey, there's somebody we want in the first. And if he doesn't get there, we're willing to trade. You tell a few white lies, but just want to let you know. So our pick may be available at that time. Well, we ended up getting 6 or 7 calls a couple picks before that pick was up. And it got down to Indianapolis or Buffalo. Indy really wanted to pick, but their package wasn't as good as Buffalo's. And I don't remember what Indy's package was, but the way it played out, I think Indy had the earlier 2, but the 3 wasn't as good. And the 3 was important to us also. So we ended up going with Buffalo, and Indy, Polian was the general manager of Indy. Then Polian ended up trading into the first round to get that trade just a few slots later. I think maybe 2 or 3 slots later, because there was a running back from LSU that he wanted. But we got Devin. We were obviously really happy. Drafted him mainly to be a return guy and to be a backup corner. He played backup corner that whole first year. I don't remember how much he played at corner. It wasn't that much. Played on special teams. Obviously, the main thing was his return ability, his opening game against Green Bay. And it was on, I don't know if you saw that little documentary the Bears put out yesterday, but that showed that opening punt return for a touchdown. And first of all, thank you to the video department that Kevin Foy, who works for them, called, and he was there when I was there, so he's a friend of mine. And he called me or sent me a text yesterday morning, and he said, "Hey, just want to send you to this before we put it out. There's a little bit of you in there, but it's the whole story we put together for Devin for his Hall of Fame induction this week." So it was really nice of them to do that, and I thanked him on Twitter. But I watched the video. The video was really good, and there was a lot of emotion to it. I don't know. Did you get to watch it at all?
I did not. I did not. I was too busy working on something, but I will definitely watch it before tonight's show.
It's like 27 minutes long. It's not short.
Right. I'm looking forward to watching it. Mr. Shorty says it was so cool to see a younger Greg in the documentary. So that's nice of him.
I wasn't that much younger. Hell, I mean, it was only 18. It was 18 years ago. Damn, 18 years. Holy shit.
They go by fast.
No kidding. But it was, go ahead.
I was just going to say, why don't you finish up your thoughts, and then I'll switch to something else.
No, I think it was a great pick for us. It's Tobe was in this documentary a lot yesterday. Mm-hmm. And Tobe said, we took a lot of shit for taking just a returner in the second round. He goes, but it only took about 2 games for people to say you were right. And we were. I mean, because he was one of the talks of the National Football League. If my recall is correct, I think he had 7 returns as a rookie for a touchdown between punts and kickoffs. There was the one that jumped out to me. I'm pretty sure it was his rookie year. We played New York at Giants Stadium. So right near the end of the half, they tried a field goal, and it was real windy. So the ball goes off to the right, and Devin takes it. God, had to be about 8 yards deep in the end zone. And he comes up about 3 or 4 yards. He's still in the end zone, comes to like a complete stop. Like he's just going to down the ball. And all the Giants guys kind of slow down. And then Devin takes off because he just lulled them to sleep with that move. And then, nobody came near touching him. And I remember, the Giants people in the press box that were around us, they were pissing and moaning and swearing and everything else. Now, what the rules are in the press box. You're not supposed to say anything or keep noise to a minimum. Well, it wasn't minimal that day.
That's amazing. Berlissimo has a question. Greg, in your opinion, do Charles Tillman, Lance Briggs, and Olin Kreutz belong in the NFL Hall of Fame? And what would be your argument for or against each of them?
I think they all do. In fact, Olin was not one of our players as far as, being drafted by us. But he, most of his career was with us. Great player, great leader. I think, 9-time Pro Bowler. You're a Pro Bowler that many times, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, when he first came up a few years ago, after his 5 years out, he got to the finalists 2 or 3 years in a row. And then, he kind of sizzles down. He gets on the group of 25 and then doesn't get any further than that. They kind of forget about him because there's new players coming in. He'll get in eventually. He deserves to get in. It's the same thing with Jay Hilgenberg. I mean, Jay Hilgenberg was the best center in his era, but nobody talks about him anymore. And so that's too bad. But Peanut changed the name. It changed the game as far as creating turnovers with the peanut punch at the corner position. Obviously, one of the better number one corners in the league. Just and a great guy, good person. So, yeah, probably the next guy to get in would be him, and then Briggs. Briggs was just an outstanding linebacker. So, I mean, if Briggs gets in, you're going to have a corner, and two linebackers from that defense, which was an outstanding defense in the Lovey years, be on the Hall of Fame. And Tommy Harris, had he not got hurt, I'm sure Tommy Harris would have been, because he was like all pro multiple times before the injuries took over.
Yeah, really sad that he was not able to live out the entire NFL career that he really deserved. He was phenomenal player. By the way, before I forget, happy birthday to Evie. She is 72 trips around the sun today and 55 plus years as a Bears girl and a huge fan of this show. She's always encouraging people to give us a thumbs up. And Evie, kisses from Greg and myself, and have a great day on your birthday.
She's still younger than me. She's never going to be as old as me. She's still a youngin'.
Yes, she is. There's no doubt about it. And if you spy on her on Facebook like I have, she's still a hot-looking woman. Okay, so let us now move on. Before the show even started, Tim Willis had this question because it is a hot topic. Greg, I mentioned Nate Davis a lot, but based on Flus's comments, do you think the coaching staff is getting fed up with him with the O-line depth now? Could he potentially be benched or cut? And then what he's referring to is Flus was asked, why didn't Nate Davis finish practice? And he said, availability is important. And he went on talking about availability. And he didn't, criticize Nate, but he kind of made it clear that, hey, man, if you're not taking snaps, somebody who is probably going to take your job.
Well, I think Flus was trying to make an example out of him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You had some problems last year, but that was last year, and we gave you a pass, but you can't have the same bullshit this year. But at the same time, I looked at, and some of the stuff on the cap doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not as good as, say, Brad, who used to be with Pro Football Focus, now he works for an agency, Brad Spielberger. It looks as if you look at over the cap, if you cut him, there's a $12 million cap hit. Well, you can't afford to cut him on a $12 million cap hit because they only got $12 million left.
Right. Even if you keep him on the bench.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could cut him, you can put, or you can't cut him, you could put him on IR. But, you know, his coach, who when he was at Tennessee, or the assistant line coach from Tennessee, is coaching here now. So there is a familiarity with him. He may have a legitimate muscle strain. And so he's got to sit for a couple of days, and he's going to be good to go going forward. Doubt he'll play this week. You know, watching Caleb in his presser yesterday, he was almost begging to play. And I hope they do play him. I think he should get a couple series. I think they need as much reps, as many reps as they can get. What I don't like, though, what kind of bugs me, and they do it every year around here, you don't see it much that the others seem to do, is every time there's a negative, a bad play, an interception, a fumble, a bad snap, whatever, you see about it in the media here. Now, yesterday it was mentioned, one person in New York mentioned that there was a couple bad snaps between the center and Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. And the offense was sloppy as a whole. Well, that's freaking Aaron Rodgers, who's going to go in the Hall of Fame. And this, you got what I said to somebody last week on X is that was the second day of pads. So this was Saturday, and they had some, bad plays and some sloppiness. You got two new players because Nate Davis was out. Two new players on the offensive line, a new quarterback, a new running back, and two new wide receivers. You expect it to be real smooth right off the bat? That's why they call it practice. It takes time. I remember, this goes back to the 2000 season when this was my last season with the Giants. Our training camp was horrible. I left there thinking we'd be lucky to win 6 games. And we went to the Super Bowl. So we lost. We lost to Baltimore in the Super Bowl that year. But, this is about, these practices are about getting the team ready for the regular season. And people expect too much. We're really, today will be the 3rd day of practice in pads because they weren't in pads yesterday. And once you put the pads on, it's a lot different than doing those practices without the pads that they had during the OTAs and the first 4 or 5 days of practice. The intensity level really jumps. There's going to be mistakes. The coaches know that. The front office knows that. And in some cases, it's scripted out that way because they want to do some stuff, especially with a rookie quarterback, to throw him off. And why do they want to do that? They want him to learn from the mistakes that he makes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shane Waldron talked about that at his press conference on yesterday. It's about installs and then practicing those plays and then seeing how the players react to that. And then the coaches strategize on, what plays to take out because certain players can't do them or what have you. So it is a detailed process. And what fans are seeing now who go out to Hallis Hall for these practice sessions, they're basically seeing the rudimentary parts of the offense being installed, and you got a lot of new players, so it's going to take a little time.
They want a finished product like it's mid-season that's playing real sharp football, and that won't happen for a couple of years.
Yep.
When you get a veteran quarterback with a bunch of veterans that he's played with all around him for a number of years, and then they're going to come out and they're going to be a lot smoother than they are right now. This is going through the growing pains. You have to expect this. In fact, if Justin was here, probably the same things would be going on, and he's had experience, but only because even though it's the same system as they ran last year with Getsy, there's still differences. There's different nuances within the system. And you've got a bunch of new players, a couple new offensive linemen, a couple new receivers, a new running back. It causes confusion and it causes mistakes. You want the mistakes to happen now.
Indeed. By the way, you mentioned the $12 million. Arnie says, I thought the $12 million cap hit had already been accounted for. $12 million against the Bears cap, whether Nate plays or is cut. Do you understand that? And what
I have to go into Over the Cap or the Spotrac to see that they had. In fact, I'll do it. I can get into Spotrac, and you don't lose me on here, right?
Correct.
So, or I'll go into Over the Cap.
Let's see here.
The contracts for.
Yeah, and I agree with Evie here. She says, from what I've read about Nate, is it would be more feasible to cut him in 2025. Yeah, there is a nice out on his contract that makes it economically much better for the Chicago Bears to cut or trade.
It says on their dead money, $12 million, like $12 million.
Mm-hmm. So it also, I know on Spotrac, it also says that if they trade him after June 1st, which is, of course, we're well beyond that, that would lessen the financial strain on the Chicago Bears.
It lessens it for this year, but there still comes out to $12 million dead money. Just part of it's this year, part of it's next year.
Okay.
But it gives you less money in which to operate. I don't know why my computer's so slow. Probably because I got so many windows open. Okay, Bears got $12,200,000 roughly, and Nate Davis' contract has dead money of $12,750,000. Now, yeah, if you're cut now, that's going to all 12 of that's not going to roll into this year, but it's still half of the money you got left on your cap for this year, and you need $6 to $7 million for operating costs during the course of the year. Mm-hmm. And so, my way of thinking is they've got now there are players that are going to get cut that are going to put that figure up. So let's say, I always say Larry Borum, but let's say Larry Borum gets cut. That's $3 million that comes back into the kitty, or whatever. So anytime you cut a player, his salary goes up unless he was a guy that was given some bonuses. Then the bonus money gets counted against the cap, but not the salary.
Okay. They need to make that stuff simpler for dumb fans like me. I'll tell you that. Let's move on. I got another question here from Danger T. Hey, Greg, what position do you think the Bears need to address before the season starts? Hey, we're going to get a better indication of that after some more practices in a practice game or two, right?
Well, I kept saying edge, but the feeling I get from what I hear is that they like Austin Booker and they like this Jake Martin. Mm-hmm. And Jake Martin's had a pretty good camp to date. Fact remains that Jake Martin, as a pro, the best year he's ever had was actually in this scheme in 2021 at Houston under Lovey. He had 4 sacks. But if you look at it this way, instead of getting a guy, one guy that can get you 10, if you got he can get you 4 or 5, and Booker can get you 4 or 5, and Walker can get you a couple, and you got Sweat getting a dozen on the other side, well, then you're all right, from the edge. So, and then it's, how much are they going to get on the inside between Gervon Dexter and Billings and Pickens? And then Walker, too, playing some inside, because they've been playing Walker inside a little bit in the sub packages, passing down situations.
Yeah. Bellissimo wants to know, if you were posed, how hard would you be working the phones for a reliable center and guard pairing to go? Okay. Tell us more how you feel about the center.
Maybe a guard, not a center. I don't know why people keep bringing up that. They are very, very happy with the center position. The only people who aren't happy about the center position are the fans because they don't know these players.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the coaching staff is extremely happy. So is the front office happy with Bates and Shelton. Now, if Nate Davis is out for an extended period of time, well, that changes a little bit, but you still got, where's my roster here, depth chart, just a second. You got Matt Pryor you can play, or Jatiri Carter that you can play in at center too. Is that what you want? That's up to the coaching staff. Pryor has started a lot of games in the National Football League. It's not like he's a rookie.
Right.
He might be a little bit better off at guard than he is at tackle. The thing that hurts is what's going to happen with Amagaji.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't been cleared to practice yet. And if he isn't cleared to practice pretty soon, say within the next week or so, could this season be a wash for him? Because I think they were hoping for him to be a solid backup this year and then challenge for a starting job next year. And I got my own idea of what I thought they had in mind. But because he's slower recovering from that quad surgery than they anticipated, that just hurts the whole conversation a little bit, the equation a little bit, so to speak. But, they know a lot more than we know about where he is as far as recovery. Maybe it's next week he's ready to step on the field, and that's the case. Hell, it's not an issue.
Yeah. Either way, I think Larry Borom becomes a little bit safer every day that Amagaji is out of practice. And while they wouldn't mind, taking those $3 million off their books, Borom has played well enough to have earned that swing tackle position. You certainly would want somebody a little better, at least, a little more proof that he's a better swing tackle, but he's certainly somebody you shouldn't discount, is my personal feeling. What do you think?
No, I don't. The only thing that bothers me about him is his money. The money he's getting paid.
Right. It's a little too much
be a pure backup.
Right.
And so, yeah, now you can cut him and redo that contract. There's no law saying you can't do that. And that may be something that is done or has to be done in order for him to keep his job. Now, one thing I'll say, just in the little bit of video I've seen of him, he looks a little bit leaner than he has in the past.
Mm-hmm.
To his credit, he was a little bit big around the waistline, and he seemed to have lost some of that. We'll get a better idea when we see him play on Thursday night, because guys like that are going to play a lot. So, and in fact, I would think that, 10:30, probably in an hour and a half, we're going to find out if Caleb's going to play, because it's around noon that Flus has his presser.
Yeah. Let us get to the current starting left tackle, Braxton Jones. He met with the media a day ago, and he was asked about the flaw that we all know he has, the bull rush, and how he's been working on it.
I just got to get better, plain and simple. I know what it is. It's year 3 of the same bull rush, and I think it's just got to translate. It's got to be something that, I see go from the individuals to one-on-ones to team. And it's kind of taking a break right in the middle of there and one-on-ones and stuff like that. But, that just goes back to drilling it over and over again, and just knowing that's what I'm getting with some guys. I just got to be better technically, and being more mindful as well in that situation with my technique.
So he's saying it's technique. What about strength? I mean,
Well, yeah, it is, but he's done that. I thought if you look at his rookie year tapes, 2022, and then you look at last year, his anchor is dramatically better than it was first year, but it's still not at the elite level. And what he's saying, and he got stronger. I know he did a lot of work with Olin. He got stronger. He's probably stronger this year than he was last year. But some of it, when he says technique, is sinking his hips.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're playing a little bit tall and you're losing a little bit of the leverage game, you get down a little bit lower, sit a little better, for lack of a better term, and then you're punching. Now it's that much harder to drive you back because your center of gravity is a little bit different.
Yeah. And it's interesting because he did talk about sometimes he gets his hands up a little late, he punches a little late and so forth. And I remember, I don't know if it was Brandon Thorne or one of these offensive line specialists said on social media a year ago, this is why I don't like offensive linemen to use to punch, because if it's late, you're going to get beat. What's your feeling about that?
Well, I'm going to change this a little bit because I'm going to go back to Austin Booker. I don't know if you recorded Austin Booker yesterday.
No, I did not.
Austin Booker was talking, and somebody asked him, who's the best guy you go against here? And he said Braxton.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because the way he changes up his hand use all the time. And the way he can keep me off balance. And so, he said he's getting better every day, learning he goes, he watches and watches the different moves he uses and then practices himself and tries to do the same. And he seems to be a quick study, but he went out of his way to say how good the hand use of Braxton Jones was.
Mm-hmm. That's encouraging to hear from Austin Booker, the rookie defensive lineman. And regarding
he's been getting reps with ones now.
Well, that's great. That's great. Would you be surprised if he has a Mark Anderson type of rookie season?
You almost put them in the same kind of mold because they weren't, kind of 1 year wonder guys in college. Mm-hmm. Anderson had a little bit of injury history. We knew he wasn't totally clean, and that's one of the reasons we got him as late as we did. And one of the things that affected his career overall, as far as length of career, he had some minor knee issues, and minor knee issues turn into more major knee issues as you wear and tear gets on your body. But with Booker, medically he was pretty clean. He didn't play that much. I mean, he redshirted his first year, played little his second year, transfers to Kansas, plays over 500 snaps last year. But you could watch him during the season and how much he improved from game to game to game. So, it was a guy that really learned how to play the game. He knows how, he's got real long arms, and he knows how to play with leverage and to win with his arms. And just from listening to him, I'm impressed with the way he talks, because he's like a sponge. He's just absorbing all this information and then translate it, or tries to translate it, to the field. And if you listen to him talk, he's going to be great, because and that's a good thing. He thinks he's going to be great. And speaking of that, Caleb's conversation yesterday, or pressure yesterday, and they asked him a couple tough questions, and there's one. And he hesitated, and he goes, I wasn't waiting for that one, which was kind of funny.
I have that one.
He said, I didn't. Yeah, but he gave honest answers.
Yeah. This is the one
know,
that you're referring to. This was Herb Howard asking him, what part of your game do you think is you're the furthest away from where you want to be week one? And I took out about 20 seconds, and I am not at all exaggerating, of him just pondering the question. And he finally said,
my blitz and coverage looks, and feeling the umbrella of the defense, and filling that out to adjust, to adjust protection, to adjust, whether it's a run, flip the run, run into it, flip the protection, get to a quick game, get to a cover zero check, however the structure of it works out, just progressing. And a lot of that comes with seeing it, and reps. And so that's why also, preseason and, those things are so important.
and I think it was soon thereafter when they asked him, do you want to play in Thursday's game? And he wants to. You can tell he wants to.
Yeah, he goes, I know I got nothing to say with it, but I guarantee he's going to, if they ask him, he's going to say, yeah, I want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I'm going to be surprised if he doesn't play.
Yeah.
Might only be a series or two, but I think you got to get him as much exposure as you can. You go back to, they did a study on Stroud and Young last year, and those guys were playing better than 50 snaps during the preseason. Well, they played 3 preseason games. This is 4. You got the extra one. Take advantage of it. He should play 60 reps in the preseason. And don't worry about it. He's not going to get hurt. Just don't worry about it. Let him learn how to play. So he's off and running in game 1 against Tennessee.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And by the way, I want to put up on the screen Bellissimo, getting back to Austin Booker. Bellissimo says he's been lining up at 3 tech with Walker and playing edge when Walker takes the 3 tech reps. It's also interesting to hear that Jervon and Montez have alternated at end and tackle. It seems like Eric Washington, the new defensive coordinator, has some creativity to him and how he's going to use these defensive linemen, Greg.
Well, what they're doing is experimenting now.
Okay.
And does it work? Can we do it? And then if it's working in practice, then you might see it a little bit in the game. And it's the whole purpose, fuck up the offense a little bit. Throw in a little something that they haven't seen.
Yeah.
Probably in a perfect world, they would have wished that he didn't say that.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
But now, in all honesty, he didn't say it. The reporter asked the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we all love the transparency from Caleb. Somebody just to put up in the chat, he's not providing these stock answers. He's really thinking about the question, which is fantastic. And sometimes I think, coaches and general managers get a little too protective about what is said. Do you hear me now? They get too protective over what is being said at the podium. Yeah. So I don't know. Anyway, speaking of the podium, Eberflus was there when he was told that his defense is a top 5 defense. And Greg, he really didn't like hearing that. Listen to this.
What we do on the grass is what matters. Okay, so all the talk of all these numbers and all that stuff. I mean, people say top 5. What does that really mean? What does it mean? We're at the end of the year and you're telling me we're a top 5? How do you know that? So to me, it's about what we do on the grass. And people can say all that, but to me, that doesn't mean anything. That's not a hill of beans to me. It's about what we do out there and how we execute as a group and the continuity and the availability we have together and start building that up. And then we'll see where we are.
What do you think, Greg?
That's a coach's answer. He's right. Because I don't care what people rate us right now. It means nothing. Well, let's start seeing what we do when the games matter. I love how the coaches refer to it. They got to go out and do it on the grass. Pep was a big user of the grass term too. He used to call it, we got to go out and have class on grass, you know. And that's what he referred to practice as, class on grass. But it's you know, these guys believe in good practice turns into good games, and I'm a firm believer in that. You practice sloppy, you're going to play sloppy.
I got to tell you also, from my background, it looks like Matt Eberflus has taken some media training in that what they told him to focus on is being authentic, because that clip there, he sounded like a real coach as opposed to other times when he's at the podium where he sounded guarded, where he sounded, he sounded like an insurance salesman who was practicing his speech. That to me was the most authentic and the most likable moment in Coach Eberflus's career, being behind the podium at Hallis Hall. Not that means a lot in terms of wins and losses.
It's experience too. Experience too. You're doing it 3 days a week in front of the media. You become second nature. Then you go out and do it the first time. It isn't easy.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
You don't know what I remember. I had to talk about the draft choices. Jerry talked about the first and the second round picks. I had to talk about the rest. And the first time you go out there and talk, it's not easy because you don't know what they're going to say. They've done their homework. You could say something and they're going to object to what you say and question about it. And so it's but the more you get used to it, it just becomes easier and easier to do.
Yeah, indeed. The center battle continues at camp. Both of the centers met with the media. I didn't pull anything from them. Did you get a chance to hear the centers talk at the podium, Greg?
No, I heard about them. Haven't listened to either one. Until the thing with Davis came up, Bates was the clear cut, from what I understand, the clear cut number one, Shelton number two. But if Davis is going to be out an extended period, Bates will end up being the starting right guard, and that's not a bad thing.
Right.
1922, Bates started every game for the Buffalo Bills and went deep into the playoffs. They had a damn good. I mean, he's a good football player. So it's. I think the depth is a lot better. I'm not sure they got. If Amagaji's there, they got a backup left tackle. If Amagaji isn't there, I'm not so sure they do have a backup left tackle.
Right.
Pryor has done it. So, I would think Pryor's going to be there before Borum, because I think Borum's more on the right side. But right now, they seem to be playing Pryor more right guard and right tackle.
Yeah. Do you expect with offensive linemen, there's rarely good offensive linemen cut towards the end of the camp. Now, we did have a situation where the Packers cut Josh Sitton, and the Bears got 3-4 good seasons out of him. But for the most part, offensive linemen available after that 53-man roster set is rare, don't you think?
If they are going to be available, they try to move them. See if they can get something from. You're never going to get a lot, but you can get something on day 3, depending where on day 3.
Yeah, Berlissimo tells us that today. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's one of the things that the pro department. That's one of their jobs, is to concentrate. And like each guy. I don't know how many people they have in the pro department, but let's say there's 4. Each guy's got would have then 2 divisions that he's studying completely, and he's reading what's being written in the papers there, and trying to figure, okay, and then you come to a conclusion. This guy's on the bubble, so you're gonna watch him a little bit more, and then go from there. Getting back to Bates, the one thing Bates said is he was told they tried to trade for him twice before they finally got the deal done.
Mm-hmm.
This is a player they have wanted for a long time.
For a long time. Yeah, they love his versatility, his leadership skills, and his play on the field is not bad. Bellissimo is reporting that today's practice starting offensive lineman is Braxton Jones at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at left guard, Coleman Shelton at center. At right guard, you got Bates, and at right tackle, Darnell Wright. That could be the starting lineup game one of the NFL regular season, Greg.
Well, it could be. It depends, but you go back to what Waldron said. So when Nate is back, he's number one. Because I think they want Bates number one at center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Bellissimo goes on to say that the draft is really strong at edge and defensive tackle this year. But by the way, that was
strong
courtesy
at guard too. I've done some guards that are really good.
Good. You want to name a name?
No, I will. I'll tell you what I've done, because what I'm doing now that I haven't done in the past is, and actually I'm doing it to try to pick up more work, is I'm doing an Excel spreadsheet. Every time I get done with a guy, I add them. I've done over 280 players, and seeing that, this is just off of last year's tape.
Mm-hmm. Good
and
stuff.
In all honesty, the whole time in the league, I never did 280 players before. So it'll be another month. I'll have 300 players done before the college season kicks off.
Outstanding. Greg, another player that was at the podium and really made an impression with people was Tyson Bagent. He is just such an engaging speaker, and he's just totally comfortable behind the podium. He talked about his workout regimen. I posted a video of him talking about it. It had over 1 million views. It's at like 1.4 million views. And he's just such a hard worker. He basically said, I want to do these workouts because when I come to camp and everybody else is complaining, I'm like, this is nothing, guys. Pretty impressive guy.
Oh, those workouts are crazy. If you watch that video, those are insane. And he's a lot bigger than he was a year ago, stronger. I'm really kind of anxious to see how much that improved, if at all, his arm strength. If he's got more zip on the ball as it comes out. But I'm sure he'll get a lot of play time Thursday night. He'll probably get the majority of the snaps.
So we'll get to see.
We don't hear anything about the other two quarterbacks.
Probably a good thing.
It'll be interesting, and I think you're going to see a lot of Tyler Scott. It's been said that Tyler Scott's had a pretty good camp, and I think we'll see a lot of Tyler Scott, a lot of Valus, a lot of Dante Pettis, and some of those other guys. I just like to see. I don't know if you need to see, some of the receivers like DJ and stuff, but I'd like to see at least one series and perhaps two of Caleb.
Yeah, I'd love to see that as well. J2K says, with all these prospects that you've been scouting, that you should put out your own prospect book of all this work. When you did all that scouting work for Pro Football Weekly, 3 or 4 issues, right? At least 4.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't doing it this early, though. I mean, I'm doing this because I'm getting paid to do it. There's agents I'm working for that want this stuff, preliminary stuff. Going to go, but you always got to say, hey, 3 things could happen to the player in the 24 season. He's going to get better, he's going to stay the same, or he's going to get worse. And if he gets better, his draft stock goes up. If he stays the same or gets worse, it obviously goes down. But I try to clarify that in each and every report that I write.
Excellent. FFG Style says, do you think the Bears will focus on the trenches in the upcoming draft or fix the problems via free agency? It's hard to tell now. This is kind of early, right?
I think he likes Yeah, very hard now. I would think right now that you've got 3 premium picks, one, and 2 twos, and that all 3 of those will probably be linemen on either side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to the one thing: is Tevin Jenkins going to be back? And it's only because, we've talked about it before. He's coming out of contract. You look at the money guards have gotten. He's missed. I should have wrote down how many games he's missed, but he hasn't played a complete season yet.
He has not.
And so is Ryan Poles going to give him the $20 million a year that some of these guards have gotten in the last 3 or 4 months? Personally, I don't think so. And one of the reasons is just look at how he's reacted to people he's drafted versus people he hasn't drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cole Kmet's about the only one he's really extended.
Right. What are your expectations for Thursday night's game, Thursday night's Hall of Fame? You've already mentioned you'd love to see Caleb Williams play a couple of snaps. Is there anything else that you are particularly going to be interested in looking at?
In all honesty, first preseason games are the absolute football games ever played. They are mistake prone. They are boring. They're extremely, but you want to look. The key for me is you try to look at individual battles.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the team, because there's only been, in the Bears case, less than 2 weeks of practice. And so throw out the team and just look at individuals and see who wins individual plays. But if the first unit does play a little bit, then team is going to come in a little bit. And just that you want to see them not necessarily score, but move the ball a little bit, have some cohesiveness, look smooth, and nobody get hurt. But if they win or lose, who cares? I've seen teams go back to 1990 season. I was working for the Giants. I went to a preseason game. It was the Bills against the Bears at the University of South Carolina. So it was the last preseason game of that year. And the Bears just killed the Bills. I mean, we're talking like a 30-point victory, maybe even more. And so you think, oh, Bills might not be that good. Well, they started off that season with like 9 wins in a row or something. And they got to their first Super Bowl and lost that one, but got to their first Super Bowl. And, Marv Levy, then he could care less what happens in preseason. He was just trying to get his team ready for the regular season. And so that's the important thing. You gotta look at more individual matchups than, who's going to make your team than how the overall team looks in a preseason game. If it's real good, that's a plus. But if it's sloppy, it's not as bad as it seems. Because there's a lot of different contributing factors.
Right. Squeegee asked the question, if Caleb plays in the Hall of Fame game, do you think it's because Poles is comfortable with the offensive line, or is it because Hard Knocks is there and they want to put him on national TV for a series or two?
Well, part of it might be Hard Knocks. Part of it is a nationally televised game.
Yeah.
And he's the number 1 pick in the draft against the number 2 pick in the draft a year ago. Now, Stroud might not play, given the circumstances of what they did last year. But, I would think, they've admitted it, that they didn't think they gave the number 1s enough reps the last 2 years. So, and I don't care if they got an extra preseason game.
they should take advantage of that, though, right? Greg,
Yeah,
you
I
frozen.
like Caleb's answer yesterday. Caleb, I want to play.
Yeah, good.
You know, these games are important. He's got the right attitude.
Justin says that he wants to see Taylor Scott produce in a meaningful scenario. And as you said, Scott was at the podium this week. He talked about the fact that he is the fourth on the depth chart, unofficial depth chart. That's my depth chart. You know, what does he do to prepare, knowing that, you know, he could have limited snaps? And just like any true pro, he says, you know, I work hard, try to get ready. When my number is called, I try to make the most of whatever play is called out there. That is a tough position to be in when you've got two guys who are definitely headed to the Hall of Fame in DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and then you got a third who is a top 9 pick in the draft.
No question. And at his position, even though he played outside a little bit last year, he's more of a inside type receiver, but he's made some plays so far in camp. He's got the speed. What looks to me is he's put on some weight. He's got a stronger build to him. But I'll tell you what, you know, you mentioned depth chart. I'm going to go into the depth chart here. And know what you do with these depth charts. As soon as you get them, throw them out, because they're not done by the coaching staff. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect example on the defensive side, defensive tackle. They got right defensive tackle Gervon Dexter, and then they got him backed up by Byron Cowart and Keith Randolph. Well, guess what? Byron Cowart and Keith Randolph are the backups for Andrew Billings, not Gervon Dexter. And Zach Pickens and Dwumfor are, you know, they got it all screwed up because they don't know. They're just, you know, it's crazy. I just laugh at these original depth charts that they put out, all the depth charts in preseason, because they don't mean a thing. So if you put in, you know, a guy gets cut 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, so here's number 2 on the depth chart. What? Which depth chart? The one that didn't mean anything?
Now, do the teams have a depth chart, like a preliminary depth chart, you know, in some conference room that is locked under, you know, a master lock, or do they not do that until a preseason game or two has been played?
Coaches probably got one on their computers, and that could be an ever-changing thing, you know, almost on a day-to-day basis. But they want to, you know, they're going to play the guys need play time in this first game, and guys they want to get a good look at to see if they're good enough to make that jump from college to the National Football League. I think that's who you're going to see get the bulk of the time in this game.
Somebody asked a question that you touched on already, and it had to do with your concern over the interior of the offensive line. As Kenny says, is Greg as concerned about this interior of the O-line as I am? Granted, not all issues can be solved at once, but this group is shaky at best. Injury-prone guards and 2 projections at center. What do you think?
Wait a minute. That's what, 2 projections at center? Coleman Shelton started the last 2 years at center for the Rams. How is he a projection? Bates has started games for the Buffalo Bills at center. His best position is center. But they had a good center and played him at guard because he's capable of doing that. I think the fans are a lot more worried than the decision makers are. Yeah, you want Nate Davis to have a clean training camp because you paid some money for him last year and you want to get paid back for that, so to speak. So, and I think calling him out a little bit publicly the other day, like Flus did, was the right thing to do. Now you do it.
I agree. Folks, if you'd like to give us a like and make sure you subscribe to the channel, we would appreciate it. I know Greg would. Just hit that little thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, and the bell. That will give you notifications on whatever device you have programmed into your Google account. And you'll know when we're live. And you can, of course, always check out the shows on demand on your audio platforms, whichever one you subscribe to, or check them out here on YouTube. We will store them for the rest of eternity. Greg, it's interesting. Bruce Ollie, Walter, Jordan, and a few other people have been talking about they really want to see the punter punt on Thursday, and it's because we've got a really special one. Sorry, Taylor.
No, I tell you, it's interesting. This guy's a draft choice, but because he's an international player, they got a roster exemption from him the other day.
Oh,
I wonder if they knew that right away, or it was something they found out later on.
Yeah,
they had that kid on the practice squad last year, offensive tackle, that they had the roster exemption on because he was, I think, an African kid or something. But this guy, because they drafted him and he played at Iowa, they might not have known that they could have that, and then just found out and said, "Oh, hey, we'll take advantage of it," because then it's having 91 players on. You can bring in an extra player, have 91 instead of 90.
Gotcha. Peter A has a good question. Paul said early on, this team will be hard to make. Can you, Greg, Gabriel, give me 3 players you think maybe on the bubble or maybe surprise cuts? Who's in danger of losing their job, Greg? That's a good one.
Borum. Number 1, Gevis. Khalil Herbert. Now, Khalil Herbert, I would have set up until 2 running backs got hurt the other day. How bad did those 2? One was Travis Homer, and one was the kid from Howard that is a pretty good player.
Yes.
How bad are those guys hurt, and how much longer will they be out? Are they just out for a couple days, or is it an extended period thing? Well, they haven't put them on any reserve list, so it doesn't look that bad. But I think Herbert, because he's one-dimensional, he's not really a receiver, and he's not really a blocker. Borum, because of his salary. Then, you got some of the receivers that Velus Jones, I think, is got to produce. It's got to be a big, big camp for him. Very important. Demarcus Robinson has to have a big camp. We haven't heard dipshit about him since the opening of camp. And so he's got to really show up in these preseason games and practice, because these coaches put a lot of emphasis on what they do in practice day after day after day. I mean, we saw that last year. Travis Gibson had an outstanding preseason. Well, when they cut down to 53, Travis Gibson was gone. So I think that's really, the names.
I think a lot of other names, or not a lot, but a couple of other names that are interesting. J2K Designs says that J. Tyree Carter somehow has found his way into the doghouse. He might be he's somebody that you've liked in the past, but
only because he didn't dress the last couple of games and he was starting early. So to me that was a concern. So watch to see when he comes in the preseason games and then how he plays.
We'll keep an eye on that. Velus Jones had a good moment at the podium this past week. He talked about his return duties, how excited that he is. He thinks these new rules are really going to help him perform at a higher level. He says, all I got to do now is just pick the hole and fly. So that's going to be interesting to see. Hopefully he will be returning kicks in that first opening kickoff of Thursday's game. I'd love to see what he's going to do.
Don't forget they signed a guy and gave him some guaranteed money too, that Carter.
Yeah.
And who's a return guy who was here a few years ago.
All right.
That's probably the battle between those two.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to be like the sixth receiver, and then in their case, the return guy. Who's the fifth receiver? Scott's the fourth receiver. I don't know who the fifth receiver is yet, but they usually keep six, and six would be Bayless or Carter.
J2K asked, do we carry 5 defensive ends? Dominic Robinson is the 5th DE right now. I don't think they'll carry 5. Right?
Well, that 50 DE by the dummy depth chart, but yeah, probably reality is the 5th defensive end too. In fact, he might be 6th. I mean, you got Walker and you could say Walker's number 1. Walker and Sweat, Booker, Mark. Yeah, Robinson would be 4th, or 5th rather. They're not going to keep 5 defensive ends. They want to keep 4 interior, 4 defensive ends, and Walker is a combo guy.
Mm-hmm.
And the ideal situation is keep 8, dress 7, with Walker being able to play inside or outside.
Okay.
In a game. So that way you can play an 8-man, you got 7 players, but play an 8-man rotation because Walker's got the flexibility to play inside and outside.
What do you know about Reddy Stewart, who's getting a lot of acclaim so far early in camp? And he's starting today at nickel in practice, according to Bellissimo's social media sources.
Good player at Troy, did not test very well. So based off his testing, when the Bears signed him, I just kind of wrote him off. He's got the height, ran like 452 or 453, and then a 458. Had a 34 and a half vert. I think his shuttles were okay. So, he'd be the slowest guy they got in the defensive backfield if he, in fact, makes the team. I think that he's probably more a practice squad guy than a 53 guy because the depth at the corner position is pretty damn good. You got Jalen Jones is pretty good. But the other kid from Duke isn't bad. And these guys are 4-4 and 4-3 guys that have played games already in their first 2 years and played fairly well. So, held their own type of thing. So this guy, it's like a fight. This guy's got to knock him out to make the squad.
That's what he's hoping to do. Kenny says, who cares what his testing is if he can play?
Don't let that fool you. Coaches love numbers.
Yeah. I think the importance, Kenny, is that you want athletes. You want the fastest guy to play. When you're playing up against Justin Jefferson and there may be a formation where you're one-on-one against them, if the quarterback sees that there's a 4.58 DB covering Justin Jefferson, audible, so that's the thing. You're going to have to cover up for those deficiencies.
Don't think for a second that the other team doesn't know what each guy can do.
Absolutely.
That's part of the scouting report they got.
Yes. And is it fair
to
say
not necessarily not in preseason, but in the regular season?
Right. Is it fair to say that, teams some of these players who have had good playing careers, despite the fact that their numbers weren't great, is it fair to say that they were greatly aided by a coaching staff that helped to disguise those deficiencies?
Part of that, and they're overachievers. A good, for instance, would be, and it's not at a corner position, but would be at linebacker and Lance Briggs. Lance Briggs was a 4.58, and there's another guy right now, DJ Edwards. Edwards is not very fast either, but they play real fast because of their instincts. But the point is, they've done it as pros. This guy's a rookie. He hasn't done it yet. Does he have a chance to do it? Yeah, absolutely. But you know, when you got numbers like he has, and I'm just trying to explain how the conversations work. Yes, what he does in practice counts, but you got to say it's got to be unanimous within the coaching staff and the personnel staff, the people in the personnel staff who are involved in the decision making, that you time 4.58, but he plays 4.48, so we're not going to worry about it. And he's got to be that much better than the guys who are in front of him. If he is a lot better than the guy in front of him, and I think I don't have the roster in front of me. I can get to it here. Let's see. Nickel Stroman. He's got to be a lot better than Stroman or Blackman to make the roster.
And Blackman, apparently there's been some reports that he's made some plays at camp too, and Stroman had a good second half of the season last year for the Bears. Leo Factor
Stroman
says
had to play because Gordon was hurt a couple of times last year, and one game he had an interception. He's been in the league 5 or 6 years. Blackman he's not big, like 5'10", 185, but he was like a 4.36 guy who can jump out of the building, very, very fast and sudden. So a free agent off the street, and Blackman was a free agent off the street, but Blackman could run a lot faster, so his natural traits were a lot better. So I'm just saying that, it's like a fight. You want to win the championship and you're going against the championship, you got to knock his ass out. Well, that's what this guy's got to do.
Indeed. Leo says he thinks that the most overrated running back is Roshan Johnson. He has no wiggle, change of direction. People were saying he was taking over the number 1 running back job. What are your thoughts on Roshan?
I think Roshan is a complete back. He's the power back that they don't really that they have to have. He's got a complete game in that he catches the ball very well. He can pass block, and he's a good runner. He's not Herbert, but the other are stronger.
Yeah, we missed a little bit of what you said there right at the end, Greg. You were basically talking about his pass blocking, I'm assuming, and
yeah, I said he's got Khalil Herbert is a very good runner. Nobody's going to take that away from him. He's got instincts. He shows some power. He can make people miss. He can get the big run. Roshan Johnson does not have the innate run with the ball skills that Khalil Herbert has. That I'll give anybody. But he is far superior to Khalil Herbert as a blocker and as a pass receiver. And you got to be able to play all three things, all three parts of the position.
Right. Everybody's talking about whether Caleb is going to play Thursday. What about Roma Dunze, the other number 1 draft pick? He missed a little bit of camp with some injury issue, he's a couple days, but he's back. And Eberflus really applauded the work that he did in OTAs and how well he is studying the book and the amount of the playbook and how much work he puts into that. So do you expect Roma Dunze to get a dozen or so snaps?
I don't know if a dozen. I would think it'd be the same as Caleb if Caleb plays.
Okay.
I mean, they're rookies. To me, I'd play him if it's me making the decision. I'm not going to play him a half. I might not even play him a quarter, but I'm going to let them get a taste.
I think, we have, since I was a kid. I mean, there was a time when I was a kid, there were 6 preseason games, which is ridiculous. But for the majority of my life, there have been 4. Now we've got an opportunity after 3-4 seasons of having just 3 preseason games to add that 4th. Let's use it wisely. The guys that need the work should be out there on Thursday. And I think a lot of these young players could use a half dozen to a dozen snaps. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, if there's going to be guys, you got young players that you're going to be counting on, you got to give them some reps, because game reps are always better than practice reps.
Mm-hmm.
The intensity is that it's a game. The intensity is that much better. And practice, the way they have practice set up, yeah, you're live, but you don't really finish the play. As far as the live tackling, you have a little bit of live tackling, but not like it is on a game. And so it's really go from snap to whistle in a game versus practice. Yes, the coaches get a lot out of practice, but I think you're going to get a little bit more out of the game. And you could see something from a player that you haven't seen in practice that all of a sudden shows up in a game. I remember there's a player in Buffalo. His name was Morrow. I can't remember his first name. Might have been Jamie. He's a fullback from a D2 school.
Mm-hmm.
And in camp, he looked terrible until they gave his ass the ball in the preseason, and nobody could stop him. And so it's like, and then they ended up being, a starter for a number of years on some of those Super Bowl teams. So, it depends on the situation at camp. Are you running with the 3s all the time? And because you're running with the 3s all the time, some of the things you can do don't have an opportunity to stand out because you're with that lowest group.
Right. Interesting. All right. I think any final questions, people in the chat, get them in now, because we're going to pull the plug on this episode of Gabriel Talks Football. We're scheduled to be back here next Monday, Greg, is what I think we have. So I'm looking forward to that show. We can talk about the Hall of Fame.
My daughter may be here. I'm not sure.
Oh, well, bring her on camera.
I will. Kelsey's coming in Thursday.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how long she's staying. She might be going back Monday morning. She might be going back Tuesday. I think she took off 6 days from work. So if that's the case, she'll probably be leaving Monday sometime. But I'm looking for it. I haven't seen Kelsey in a year. So.
All right. We got 3 questions that came in. So, Kelsey coming in, and please bring her on the show Monday. That would be a treat for all of us.
She'd be embarrassed, but she might.
Great. FFG wants to know, why are there so few padded practices in training camp nowadays?
By rule.
Players Union and the league have worked that out for player safety purposes. OKC says he wants to see Keith Robinson play on Thursday, the interior defensive lineman from Illinois. D. Starren wants to know if Phil Snow still works for the Bears, or does Washington take that over? Phil Snow was hired last season at the second half of the season.
Washington's the defensive coordinator. He wouldn't be taking it over.
Right. It was a scouting role that Snow had, right?
Yeah, he was like an advanced scout. Whether he is still doing that, I have no idea. I've not heard his name since the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody in the media ought to ask Flus that at one of his pressers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, those were huge responsibilities that Phil Snow had, and the team started playing well a couple of weeks after he was hired.
Well, technically, though, here's the thing. What he was doing, that's what the pro department's supposed to do.
Okay.
As part of it. But the pro department's got a lot of work to do. And so he was doing probably over and above what the average pro scouting department does in game preparation, but it helped.
It sure did. It sure did. Yeah, I think, as opposed to asking some of these weird questions you get from some of your favorite reporters, Greg, maybe they should ask that one. JTK says, Greg, Coward and Randall are both fighting for that backup nose tackle. Do either of them, you think, do they make the team?
When he says Randall, does he mean Randolph from Illinois, I assume?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I would think if it's even, it's Randolph. Coward has, in fairness to Coward, he has played some pretty good football, but it hasn't been in a few years. Now, what's happened to him, why, what the circumstances are, I have no idea. But he's very capable of being that backup nose. Randolph is probably a little better athlete. He might not have as much sand in his ass as Coward does. But I think the talent and the upside's better. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much and how well he plays, not just Thursday, but the following week and the following week.
Greg, you're off to do another assignment. You want to share with your audience what you're going to do this afternoon?
We got a conference call on the East-West because we got to get ready for scouting for players for the East-West, which a lot of it's already, been started, but scouting for the East-West Shrine game. It's the 100th anniversary of the game this year.
Oh, nice.
So in Dallas, and I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's going to be played in, they played it at the Cowboys practice facility, which seats about 15,000 or something last January. I think it's going to be in AT&T Stadium this year because it's the 100th anniversary.
Wow, that's going to be awesome.
And the Cowboys are doing a great job in helping promote this game. And we had, I think 10 or 12 more players drafted this year than we did the year before. And the year before was the most we had in a long time. I think we had over 50 players drafted this past year who played the game. So that, the quality of the game gets better and better every year.
That is fantastic. And then East-West Shrine also released a list of their top 100 players, I think it was, that they're looking at this closely.
Top 1,000. I'll tell you what was nice about that was the way the colleges responded. A lot of those schools, if the school had 5 players on the watch list, they tweeted out something about the players and on the watch list. So there was that, I think, probably ended up working a lot better than had been anticipated when they decided to do that.
Yeah. When I spoke with Jim Nagy.
And our friend Eric, just to give him a little plug, our friend Eric Galko is the man who's in charge of that East-West game.
Yes, he is.
This will be his fourth year that he's run that game.
He's fantastic in so many different ways. And plus, a couple of years ago, when I talked to the executive director of the Senior Bowl, Jim Nagy, he gave Eric some credit, saying that he's been doing some wonderful work, including the work on social media that the Shrine Bowl people are doing has been fantastic and laying a little pressure on the folks at the Senior Bowl. So good to see.
Well, the Shrine Bowl just, it just wasn't run good for a number of years.
Yeah.
And
until Eric
when Eric took it over, and Eric and I have been good friends for a long time, and we worked together in the XFL, but I don't even know if he knew some of the history of the Shrine Bowl, but I told him, I said, Eric, when I started going to this game, which was 1984, it was played at the old Stanford Stadium. They used to get 75,000 every year at that game. And it was a West Coast convention for the Shriners. They had this huge parade. The festivities would start an hour before the game. And all the different Shrine organizations from the West Coast of the United States would all have these big floats and come in and then gather in the middle of the field, and a good portion of the people at the game were Shriners. But every year after year after year, there were 70,000 plus at the game.
Fantastic. It's good to see them bouncing back and having that prestige that they once had. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this episode. I'll be back here tonight at 8 o'clock with Dan Aguirre, Johnny Santucci, talking more Bears football, and we'll have our share of penis and fart jokes. So, Greg, anytime you want to join us for one of our Tuesday night shows, we'll make sure all the kids are in bed and join us, and we can talk about some of the stories that you're saving for your book.
Sounds good.
Okay, take care, everybody. You heard it.
Okay, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you next week.